Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Missing Lynx post-game live stream podcast thing. Kind of a stretch of podcasts here. This will be the third one in a row this week. We also are going to have the post-game show with El Mose from WCCO after the Dream game on Sunday. But today, for the first time in over a month, Britt Robson from RacketMN joins me. How's it going, Britt?
Good, thanks.
Britt, I just read his piece that's going to be coming out on Racket, and I wanted to touch on that a little bit first before I get into irritating Britt with random questions about himself that I've always been curious about. But piece that you had come out was pretty focused on the Golden State Valkyries game. And one thing I really kind of enjoyed that you pointed out, it was Olivia Miles' lack of making the easy passes, which is something you asked Cheryl post game, and that was probably the most excited thing I've seen her want to talk about in a couple weeks. I guess just what have you been noticing from Liv's Liv's passing?
Yeah, well, I mean, she doesn't. She's an artist. She doesn't want to do the uncreative thing. And sometimes when Golden State was settling back into a zone or they were purposefully paying attention to sealing gaps, it was a question of what you want to do. The only way to break a zone effectively is with great outside shooting. But even then, you need a lot of rapid, easy, ordinary passes because the ball moves faster than people. And even in a zone, people can't cover those. Now, what Olivia Miles is great at is reading how pick and rolls are unfolding, hitting that seam at exactly the time that somebody's breaking free off the pick, usually Tasha Howard, but it can be anybody else. She's also great at the drive and kick, basically the thing where she's great at moving around pieces on the chessboard and surveying how those pieces can be moved. Well, those pieces stay pretty stable if you're in a zone, or in the Golden State's case, also kind of matching up and occasionally trapping. It was actually, I thought, a very good defensive game plan. I think the coach is an excellent coach for the Valkyries. And what happened was, at first, she just got stubborn about when she couldn't find the kind of artistic, great creative pass that has made her such a must-watch player. She kept searching for it. And you can't indulge in rapid ball movement beginning when it's like 14 on the clock or 10 on the clock. And so two things happened. One, she didn't do the ordinary pass that would start things going. And secondly, once she did do it, there wasn't enough time on the clock to create a good shot. And so consequently, they had shots that were not great shots. And she also was forced to call her own name enough. She led the team in shots. There was only a dozen, but there weren't a lot of shots to be made because they managed to hurt the Lynx on clock, and there wasn't nearly as much transition opportunities as the Lynx usually take, which are the fast possessions. The Lynx had only 3 points off 9 turnovers, which attests to Golden State getting back in time, but also just the ability of them to make an offense work. And so the bottom line was why Cheryl was so appreciative of my question was because she wanted it to be somebody other than herself saying this about Liv, and wanted it to be said that, hey, every now and then you just have to be a cog in the machine. You can't be the driver of the machine. And Liv's artistic sentiments and ego push against that. And I get that. I mean, I actually, it's one of the things I enjoy about her. But it is a weakness in her game when she's up against something where she's not going to break Golden State's defense by herself. You break the zone by being part of that cog, and then you move things around. And if you do it often enough, then Golden State's the one that has to adjust. And they didn't have to in that game.
What was really interesting is after the last game in Golden State, in the post game, I asked Cheryl just about like Liv having, I think she had 4 turnovers in the first half or 5 turnovers in the first half and then 0 in the second half. And Cheryl's answer was pretty similar to what you just said, of just like, we talked at halftime and I told her she has to start making the easy plays. Like, you have to just start doing, start the rotation. And asked Liv about that when she came up to the podium, and Liv kind of smiled and said like, yeah, Cheryl gets on me for that. I do wonder how much that will affect this team in the playoffs, especially when you're playing the same team over and over again. Do you think that's something that she can like overcome or kind of like overpower her instincts to make kind of the flashy or the to kind of the kill shot type of passes where it just sucks the air out of a team and start doing the easy things? Or I guess, what's your thoughts on her ability to kind of grow in that at this stage of the season?
Well, I think she wants to win first and foremost. And I think that she has a strong-willed coach that has given her a lot of rope. So if she's going to tug on the rope a little bit, I think that Liv will respect that. I think that she will understand that she's been given an extraordinary opportunity to run a very capable, talented, deep offense. Even with feedback, what we've seen in the time that Fee has been back is Liv Miles still can do exactly what she wants on the perimeter with the ball. Very occasionally, they'll have a situation where Fee is bringing the ball up instead and initiating instead. But a lot of that is also, quite frankly, to get Liv involved in secondary actions, much as the Wolves want to do with Anthony Edwards. It's still an acknowledgement that you try to get one of your best players going. And that increasingly has been the purview of Liv Miles rather than Fee when it comes to how the offense is dictated. Fee has a lot more influence and in that way say on what happens on defense. But I do think, in answer to your question, yes, I think Miles is smart. She's competitive. She knows that, you really stake your claim with W's, not with dimes. And so I think she'll prioritize the W's and the hockey assists over the nifty things. Playoff basketball usually isn't as pretty as regular season basketball, and Liv Miles is an incredibly pretty player. But I do think that she also has both the capability and the wisdom to adjust her game in a manner that will help the team.
You also mentioned Fee in your piece. You mentioned Fee a couple times here. I mean, they're 9-2 with Fee coming back. I appreciated again in your piece that you mentioned kind of the ugly side of Napheesa Collier that I think Lynx fans and people on the beat have kind of seen for years, where it's just, Cheryl's again talked about it over the past couple seasons of like, sometimes you almost have to like yell Fee into being the MVP candidate, where there's games where if she's getting covered a certain way or if it's super physical, she'll almost make the right play too many times when you just need Fee to go get a bucket sometimes. And Golden State really felt like the first time since she's been back where it was, Fee is making the right pass. She's probably making the right reads out of certain doubles and out of the zone, but they just desperately needed her to kind of take it over. I guess just what are your thoughts on that side of Fee? Because so far, the first 10 games of Fee being back, I mean, she led the league in net rating.
Right. It's the opposite of what I think about Liv Miles. I think that she has to be more engaged and she has to seize moments more unilaterally, more aggressively. I do think, given how capable she is, first of all, she's sitting like 45% of her threes, which is a new addition to her game. And unfortunately, the sample size isn't enough to really consider whether or not that's sustainable. But I think both the coach and anybody who watches this team would like to see if it's sustainable, because Fee is a dangerous outside shooter on top of her ability to put the ball on the floor, her ability to post up, her footwork in the mid-range. All of those things just add another dimension that will create gravity for everybody else. And she is not exploring that enough. I do think some of it may be, as I pointed out in the piece, there are, logical reasons why this may be happening. The ankles may not be totally healed. I mean, it was pretty extensive surgery that happened in this calendar year. And then there's the deference to Liv Miles, who is obviously doing just fine running the show. And I think Fee's selfless, synergistic approach is one of the reasons she is such a net ratings champ right now. But the right play isn't always going to be the most facilitating play. Sometimes the right play is, quite frankly, hero ball. And you really need to pick your spots on when that should be. But when you have an amped up Golden State team that had every reason to want to gain vengeance on the Lynx the other night, never having beaten them, taking the team to single possessions in their first two losses of the season, and then getting thumped by double figures on their own court just 5 days earlier, trying to prevent the Lynx from clinching the number one seed in their face on that night. There was all kinds of reasons, and you could see it. You could see it in the way Hayes always plays that way, but you could see the extra edge in Burton. You could see the extra edge in some of the ways that Salon was playing. I just feel like they needed a counter that the Lynx needed a counter that they don't usually need to invoke. And the best one they had by far was the all-around magic of Napheesa Collier. And I mean, the stats were frankly pathetic. She had no personal fouls. She had no free throws. She was not engaged in the fray. You pick up fouls and you get fouled when you are engaged that way. She had 2 assists and 2 turnovers. She did have 7 offensive rebounds. Give her credit for that. But I mean, Cheryl said post-game that the plan for the offense was to utilize their matchup advantages in the paint. Well, that's Tasha Howard and Napheesa Collier. And they did go to both of them on a somewhat regular basis. Fee was 2 for 6 on shots from within 7 feet of the basket. And the team as a whole was 11 for 29 on shots inside the 3-point line. So obviously, I mean, Golden State wanted it more. Maya Caldwell said as much post-game, literally said as much, that they play hard and they wanted it more. And that was, I think, obvious to most people. I thought after the Lynx, took an 8-0 lead and Golden State couldn't buy a basket, from then on, it was pretty consistently thorough, if not domination, thorough advantage on the part of the Valkyries. And they showed, in my view anyway, that they're the second best team of the W.
Yeah, you mentioned the wanting it more. I felt that too. I also felt like this was kind of the first time a defense has almost broken the Lynx. I mean, Kayla McBride was literally yelling at the rim in the third quarter. That's usually not a good sign. Liv, I think, brought up prayer hands or something after she made a basket at one point. Tosh was looking kind of dejected. It's a vibe that the Lynx haven't really shown yet this season, which unfortunately the schedule doesn't get any easier, right? I mean, Atlanta on Sunday is going to be another big physical team. New York is a big physical team, and then 2 against Indiana. I guess, do you see anything from that game that is something to be concerned about that might continue on? Or do you feel kind of like, as Cheryl said post-game, of just like they needed a loss like this? The whole team needed it.
Well, I don't know if they needed a loss like this, but I do think it's human nature. I think if you win 16 out of 17 games, a good handful, maybe more, where you were trailing in the fourth quarter, you have an assumption. You have, I called it a serene confidence. There's something, a serene confidence is imposing and magisterial until it isn't, until it begins to look like miscalculation, until it begins to look like overconfidence. And it's up to the opponent to make the team look that way. And until Golden State did the other night, no team really. I mean, the Sun loss or whatever. I can't remember what the game was that they lost. Maybe it was the Sparks game. The defense didn't play any defense game. But I mean, essentially, the Lynx have pretty much dictated what they want. Now, if they needed it only to remind themselves that they need to be more focused and more cognizant of their roles and more thorough in what their sets and actions are. Fee needs to be more aggressive. Liv needs to be less artistic. Natasha Howard, I mean, what I find about Tasha Howard is she is who she is, win, lose, draw, whatever. She's always going to flub shots at the rim. She's always going to have beautiful footwork the other 70% of the time that gets her a bucket at the rim. She's always going to have a hands problem a little bit with some things. She's always going to occasionally get beaten off the dribble on things that she thinks she's got sussed. But she is a remarkably stable, her strengths and weaknesses are remarkably consistent, and therefore the positive balance of those strengths and weaknesses make her a consistently positive player. And so I actually think she's probably and I would say the other holdovers, I mean, K-Mac and Williams are probably the ballast. Yeah, the ballast of this team. You would like to say that Fee is the ballast of this team, but this is a different season. And Fee is, and it may be, I think one of the most interesting things that's going to happen in the postseason is watching to what extent Fee decides to redefine her role, if in fact she does decide to do that. And I think that will come down to the level of competition, who exactly they are playing. I mean, if they're playing the Aces, obviously Fee is remarkably important all of a sudden because she can guard Asia Wilson. But it could be that another team is, against the Fever, I'm not sure that Fee is necessarily the person that is more important. So a lot of it is matchups, but I guess what I would say is that this team doesn't really have to worry. I mean, they clinched essentially more or less clinched. It isn't official yet, but a lot of people cannot lose and the Lynx cannot win in order for them not to have the number one seed, which is, I think, maybe even mathematically impossible because there's probably some games in that 5 or 6 games left with each team that they'll eliminate each other before the Lynx even encounter it. And the Lynx are not going to lose their last 5 games. I mean, it's just the way it is.
We'd be having a vastly different conversation if they go 0-6 in their last 6. Exactly.
I don't think it's a problem, I guess is what I would say. I think it is a good reminder that it doesn't come easy.
Britt, I'm going to throw us over to a quick ad read here. When we come back, I want to talk just about the FIBA break and maybe get into playoffs a little bit. But first, ads. Well, hello. Thank you, Livestream Andrew. This is Ad Read Andrew. And today we have Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, the presenting sponsor for the Missing Lynx podcast. Firehawk Construction and Remodeling strives to inspire people to follow their ideas. working with respect and understanding to create a quality, tailored result. Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, located in Blaine and serving in the North Metro area, is here to help you with your building and remodeling needs. I can say personally, thanks to Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, I have a beautiful deck in my backyard and countless projects that I started, they finished. Get started on your new deck or remodel today by calling Isaac at 763-710-5686. And we're back with another ad read, this time for Pence Homes, the presenting sponsor of Hitting the Hardwood Network. From the best tools and technology to transparency throughout the entire process, Nate Pence and the Pence Homes team is the top choice for buyers, sellers, and is proud to support you and your home ownership goals. Get started today by calling 612-308-1122 or by emailing info@pencehomes.com. So Cheryl, before the game, answered a question you talking about wanting to use more of these deep rotational players to kind of figure out the rotations for the playoffs. I asked her after the game about Chloe Bibby. She kind of echoed the same thing of, yeah, these are going to be the moments where we want to just see what we have. I think she said Chloe's here for a purpose. News comes out yesterday that Dorka and Tony both got placed on whatever the delayed contract is for them to go play in FIBA. Sounds like Alishka might be going that way too. Chloe might be going that way as well, where they're not here on Sunday. I guess just what are you most interested in seeing from, like the Ola Kosus or the Nia Coffees or the bench players that are going to be here in that game on Sunday?
Well, Coffee's easy because she obviously thrives with the starters and has more difficulty. Coffee prides herself on being a supplement, on being a complement. And that requires known entities to play off of. When I talked to her, the only one-on-one interview I've done that since I joined the beat was with her after a game one time, and basically she is what you might expect, incredibly stand-up teammate. She's the kind of person that probably their best low man filler. Great at has a great feel for block shots, has a great feel for clogging the lane, has an oak trunk that is very, very difficult to dislodge, and is a great spot up open shooter. I think her game, if she's hitting her threes, she's incredibly valuable. If she's not hitting her threes, she's merely good. But I think she's a known entity. I would say Kosu, what I would love to see, I would have liked to see Kosu gotten a lot more action against Golden State, because I think that's exactly the kind of team that I want to see. I want to see her mix it up. I want to see what, she's extremely young. She's extremely earnest. And when she's getting jostled around by large, talented players, I want to see what kind of pushback she can bring, whether it's a foul-oriented pushback or whether it is an effective putback kind of pushback, or her rotations. I would love to see her get good minutes against Atlanta, because Atlanta has more finesse bigs who are also very good defenders. I mean, Lynx fans know them both well. But that's the kind of person I want to see if Kosu can negate without getting into foul trouble. And so I would love to see her get some minutes on the 30th. And then, you move along. I think that, the quick point guard, is she going to a roster, FIBA roster? What's it called? Jaloba or something now?
I believe she's in Spain. or Eliška Jakova. Yes,
Jakova.
she's playing for Czechia.
Yeah, but I mean, will she be there on Sunday?
I would be surprised. I don't think they've officially like delayed her contract, but I think all of them are, from what I can understand or what I looked at, I think their bench is going to be Maya, Nia, Kosu, and then Liatu King is probably it.
Yeah.
Which I don't know what fees.
You know,
they haven't said anything about fee yet. I don't know if it's because they're playing Atlanta and Angel Reese and Ryan Howard are on Team USA. Maybe all three of them get on a plane after the game and go to Berlin or Belgium. I'm not sure. I would expect fee to play just because I think Atlanta has, said that they're going to be playing all their players that are there. But at the same time, like, they might be without fee as well. It's going to be a weird game.
Well, it matters to Atlanta,
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're
still battling
home court, right?
Yeah, they're still in that
the 4-5
3-4-5. Yeah.
3 isn't important, but 4-5 is very important. And so, I think that they will. It would not surprise me if Atlanta wins on Sunday, simply because they will probably have a fuller roster and have more at stake. I think that if Fee plays, then you have a situation where you have Fee, Liv, Tasha, K-Mac, and and Maya. That's that's a good team, but it also, you want to see a lot of minutes for Nia and Kosu. And so, that's actually, I hadn't really considered it, quite frankly, until you brought this up, but it does make, in my opinion, a more attractive game, given that the stakes involved for the Lynx now is all preparation and not really so much results.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by it. I think I've been kind of wondering why Kosu hasn't gotten any run since Fee came back. And I know Cheryl has said a couple times, like, hey, we got to give 32 minutes to Fee. There's just not going to be the minutes for other players. But I mean, especially with some of the Dorka outings, I've been just curious to see if it's, Kosu's just so young that they feel like they can, put her off to the side and worry about it later, and the ego thing won't be there, or if it's something that's going on in practice, kind of like, you see that stuff all the time where a high prospect or someone the fans are high on doesn't get playing time because they're making mistakes in practice. I do want to ask you about Dorka, though, because I've been pretty critical of her since she has returned. Where have you been sitting at with Dorka, though?
Mostly critical. I mean, if you watch the game, and it's very, very difficult not to be critical. I will say, I don't know why they didn't give her a second block on the stat sheet the other night. She did have 2 blocks in the first half. And blocking shots and getting tough rebounds has been totally missing from her game the first month back. And that, I mean, if you're 6'5", for God's sake, and you're not, deterring, if you're not protecting the rim and you're not ending possessions on the defensive glass, then you're far less forgiving on her slow rotations, saying, well, she's 6'5" and she's a lumbering. Well, she doesn't play like a big,
Yeah.
Kosu plays bigger than she does. Fee and Howard play bigger than she does. I would argue that Olivia and also Courtney play bigger than she does on occasions. So what you want from her, here's what I can say. I can say that what has finally clicked for her in the last, say, 3 or 4 games has been more rapid decision-making. And that was one of the more maddening things. That gives the impression of lassitude. It gives the impression of somebody either being clueless or lazy. Neither one of them a good look, obviously. And so if you're standing around, if you're hesitant on getting a shot, given how long it takes for her to get a shot up, then, that's a problem. And so she's not getting her shot up in time because she's indecisive. Her rotations sometimes have not been that alert to what's happening as the rotation develops. But I think she's getting better. I mean, I think that she has become a little bit more effective on defense. As I said, 2 blocks, one, I think, a coming over on a weak side block, which is, a near coffee special. To see that from Dorka, and to see Dorka get a rebound amid 2 opponents. When that happened the other night, it wasn't Golden State, it was probably the game before. But anyway, whatever it was, I was thinking, man, how rare is that to see that kind of rebounding? And that shouldn't happen,
No, for someone that's 6'5", we should see it twice a game.
Right. On the other hand, she came off a really good season in Europe. A lot of that was because of her shooting. And I think, like Coffee, if she is open and has time, she absolutely needs to be a 40-plus three-point shooter to be effective on the court, to be more effective on the court. I think Nia Coffey has more intangibles than Dorka and can probably get away with missing more threes. Mm-hmm. But Cheryl's made a political decision. It's part of the territory. I mean, you've got a person that was actually, I thought, a pretty good player last year for them in their spot moments on the court. Or no, I'm sorry, it was the year before.
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. I thought, she looked raw, but like Kosu now. And but then, you just have a situation where she's getting a decent amount of money and she has earned the right to have a little bit of patience. And I think that right is elapsed. On the other hand, if your bigs get in foul trouble in the playoffs, do you want to turn over extremely high leverage minutes to a 21-year-old green person, somebody who's untested? I think that Dorka is an insurance policy you hopefully do not have to exercise. I think that's the way Cheryl is probably portioning her minutes right now, keeping her in enough of a rhythm where if you've got to rely on Dorka, you're crossing your fingers, but you're not praying,
That's well said. Do you think she gets minutes in the playoffs, Dorka?
I really do think it depends on how the whistle runs.
Yeah.
And I think if Howard gets 3 fouls in the first half, she does. I think that the Lynx don't mind going small. And so, I think that I think she does. I think she gets some minutes.
Okay. You mentioned it when Chloe checked in. I think you called her beef and gristle.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they needed. They were getting pushed around at that point. And I didn't think it was hard at all to read Cheryl Reeves' mind at that point.
No.
Let's get somebody in the game who will start pushing back,
Yep.
And I think that's her role, quite frankly. I am not sure. Now, on the other hand, she wound up, her first shot hit the side stanchion. Her second one was a runner that splashed, and then she hit 2 threes. So if she can shoot, so much of this has to do with the three-point shooting. The Lynx really do have a democracy when it comes to the three-point line. If you're open, you're encouraged to shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have bigs who can make that shot and also provide you with some physicality, that's the Dorka, Kosu, Chloe equation right there. Who does that the best?
It is interesting that, like, you kind of listed everybody off earlier, of just from K-Mac and Court to Tosh being kind of the barometers, Fee figuring out her place, Liv being the alpha. Maya's been significantly better since the last time you've been on the pod with me. Coffee, I think we're both very high on it. It really is this last, like, 8th player rotation spot that is, it feels like this is kind of the last question remaining for this team, weirdly. Outside of, I would say, Fee and what her role turns into is probably my biggest question, just because Fee in the past 2 years has had this tendency of kind of fading into the background when other players are doing well or when things start getting messy. But really, it's this 8th player is the other like question. And other than that, it seems like this team is pretty well set to go on a long run, right?
Yeah, I do think that there is a little bit of a complication with Nia Coffey in that she, quite frankly, despite her entire character and her entire attitude, which is I will do whatever anybody wants me to do, she is much, much better player as a starter.
Yeah.
And that's, you have 5 players that are clearly more likely to start than her, and it would be very disruptive not to. But I do think whenever possible, she should get most of her minutes with at least 2 or 3 other starters on the court. And I think that needs to be a governing factor in her rotation. I don't think she should come in with 2 other subs. I think that she ought to be playing, maybe coming in as the first sub, and maybe giving Fee or Howard, or somebody an early. I know Cheryl is toyed with the idea of her being a 3, and I do think, again, it's all matchups. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. I don't see Dorka and Nia on the court together, which is one of the things Cheryl has leaned on. I would not want to do that in the playoffs, for example.
That has been, objectively, it's been bad, because I think Dorka, she just defensively, her rotations and her ability to, like, slide in and kind of clog the paints or be the low man when someone gets blowed by and kind of weak side help, like, it's just been so bad that when she's with Nia, I feel like Nia almost recognizes I'm going to have to help this out more, which then I feel like gives up.
Rudy Gobert's it, right?
Right. She's like, I'm just going to need to do everything, which I don't know. Nia's such an interesting player, because you're absolutely right. When she's with the starters and she's the 5th option on offense and she knows that everybody is going to be in the right spot on defense, she's awesome. But I think when she has to think a little more, or when she's put in charge of more of the offense, it starts to show that she has these flaws that have kind of, there's a reason why in Atlanta for the last 4 years before she came here, her minutes were getting cut, which credit to Cheryl for figuring it out. But it is a weird dynamic for a player.
Right. And well, it's a limiting dynamic. And so
that's a better way of putting it.
And so the question becomes, is it worth it to make adjustments for those limitations, or do you just have to accept the fact that instead of being really good, she's going to be competent, And having a competent physical player off the bench who, when she's hot, is more than that, even off the bench, is nothing to sneeze at in the playoffs. But again, assuming that everybody ramps up, especially, teams like the Liberty and the Aces, who are regarding the regular season as kind of a warm-up, it will be interesting to see how much things get turned on and whether or not, how much the status quo, the cliche, and it's an accurate one, it's why it's a cliche, it's accurate, is the playoffs have a different feel, a different intensity, and it is almost a different game. And so there are ways to argue that makes accommodating coffee more important, and there are ways to argue that means that you basically have to not even think about that. You just have to let coffee play 12 minutes at most and leave it at that. I don't know which way she'll go. Cheryl will go. Before the Golden State game, I did ask her if they clinched, before FIBA, how they regard the rest of the season. And she basically said she would talk to the team, which I half believe. And I think that, it will be something where there will be some input from Fee and K-Mac and Howard and some of the vets who know playoff basketball. And, I think it'll be a group assessment as the best way to move forward. And not for nothing, you have Lindsay Whalen and Becca Brunson. And, you got a lot of people who understand what's coming. And so it will be the Lynx are in danger of becoming like the Cleveland Cavaliers, of becoming a really, really fearsome regular season team that can't finish in the playoffs. They were the number one in offense. I'm not telling you anything new. Offense and defense last year and faded out in the second round. Fee's injury obviously had a lot to do with it, but so did the Mercury's physicality. So again, and that was with, the co-defensive player of the year and a, triple-double threat in Jessica Shepard coming. So this is a big time, and a lot of people within the organization understand that they don't want a narrative to develop about this team. And the way to quiet that, at the very least, is to get to the finals and then play spectacular basketball. And if there's a team out there that's playing even better, all right, that's one story. But if you underperform in the postseason, that is the continuation of another story. And that's a story they don't want told.
I think you tweeted it out like a week or so ago of just, it would be hard to see this team losing in a 7-game series.
Yeah, I still believe that.
With the caveat of we're going to go to a game, or we're going to watch a game on Sunday, then not see this team for almost 3 weeks. And then they play 4 games in 8 nights.
Yeah.
Who worries you in the playoffs that would run into the Lynx? Which first round, it looks like it's going to be Dallas. Second round, I think it's safe to assume it'll probably be either Indiana or Atlanta. And then the finals, it's going to be a bracket on the other side of the Liberty, Golden State, and Aces. I guess, what team do you think could cause the most trouble for these guys?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because Liberty, Golden State, and the Aces are exactly the 3 teams I would worry about the most. And I do worry about the Liberty falling to the 8th seed and having that be, Jonquil Jones, Brianna Stewart, and Sabrina, with Feebush, and
that's a good team.
They are not a team you want to face in an early round of the playoffs, because they have told themselves all season, I guarantee you, that we are not playing our best basketball. And so they will have to put up or shut up when the postseason starts. and they have a lot of money players on that team. I think JJ is one of the toughest matchups for this roster. Just her, she's Alyssa Thomas with a little more poundage and, maybe less skills in some areas, more skills in others. But that type of player is hard for the Lynx to deal with. And then, you got the outside shooting of Sabrina, and then you've got Brianna Stewart, who I fully expect to have a great playoffs. I mean, I just don't think she's the kind of player, her performance in Game 7 of or most of that series notwithstanding, I think she's a money player. So that's a team I worry about. Golden State, obviously, from what we just saw on Monday, and for that matter, if you've watched them all season, extremely well coached. Gabby Williams is what a great, fit. And Burt and the people we talked about, Hayes off the bench. And then, you've got the Aces who they have 3 people who are used to hitting game-winning shots. I mean, it's like they identify their personality with coming up big when it matters. And you've got a person that's likely to be, the 5-time MVP. I would say it's Asia Wilson's to lose, despite the way we would feel about Miles on that. And so, those 3, and if those 3 do manage to, wear each other out in the other bracket, that's good news for the Lynx. As for the other people remaining, I don't know. I mean, I think Paige Buchers is a really, really good player. And I mean, I'm not saying anything new, but I mean, I think that she is, she's the equal of Caitlin Clark, in my opinion. And I, that I'm not neither bad mouthing Caitlin Clark nor exalting Caitlin Clark. I just think that if you remove all the garbage around Caitlin Clark, she is a hell of a player. And I think Paige Buchers is that player as well. Somebody who can get everybody involved, who can score, phenomenal shooter, highly competitive. I think Paige is a little bit better defender. I think that Caitlin is a little bit better shooter, although again, really narrow. I do think that, having Kelsey also in that Fever lineup, and their experience last year, they went deep, so they've got that. I would say on that side, the Fever are probably the team I would worry about the most. That shouldn't be a surprise. They're 3rd right now, aren't they?
I think they just dropped back down to 4.
Okay.
Like last night, but it's like a half a game between Atlanta, Indiana.
So they're and it will be interesting. They close out with 2 against 2 Fever Lynx games. They will have the ability to figure out their seeding at that point in time, and that will be an interesting juxtaposition. You see it a lot in the NBA. I don't know. I haven't followed the W closely enough to know whether teams have orchestrated their seeding in the final game or 2 in the past. But the Fever will be in a position to do that, I think, against the Lynx. So losing 2 in a row to the Lynx would be no shame. And at the same time, maybe they like whoever the 2 seed is or the 3 seed is, and they want 7 or 6 if they've fallen back. Or, maybe if they're locked into 4 or 5, if they win out, they don't like that 4 or 5 matchup. I mean, those kinds of things do happen. So, it'll be interesting to see. I do think that the Lynx match up well with the Fever because the Fever aren't exceptionally large in their talent. And I bulk and athleticism, physicality are still things that can hurt the Lynx. and especially over a long series where there's a war of attrition. And I do think that the W officials are going to emulate the NBA and swallow their whistles even more in the postseason. And I think that, that's going to, Tosh Howard's going to get the shit kicked out of her if that happens,
Yep.
and how long, that's the way to beat the Lynx, quite frankly, is if you just physically pummel Fee and Howard and Miles on the perimeter. What you have as a counter there again is Nia Coffey, and Kosu to some extent. Kayla's obviously, K-Mac is a physical player when she needs to be, but we're talking about people who send messages physically, and the Lynx don't have a lot of message senders, and other teams do. So that's a concern.
Jude brings up your point from earlier, Chloe Bibby, being the gristle and the message sender.
Yeah, I mean, if the Lynx are relying on Chloe Bibby to pull out a postseason game, then there's going to be a lot of evolution between now and then in what happens. And it isn't that, I know very little about her. Again, this is as a person who was a fairly chronic watcher of the Lynx and a little bit of the rest of the W until the playoffs, where I watched most everything. That's my background, which is very different than, inhaling everything about the NBA for decades. So I have huge gaps in my knowledge, and Chloe Bibby as a player is one of them. I have no idea really if she can be a rotation player in the postseason.
It's first, I just want to get to your point about like pummeling. Like that's honestly how both seasons ended. I mean, New York, Jonquel, Kayla Thornton, even Stewie, they just beat the crap out of Alana Smith and Fee, and whether you want to argue about the incidental contact or whatever, how that series ended, like that was obviously the Liberty's plan going into it. And then last year, like that's exactly what Phoenix did.
Oh, that's Alyssa Thomas's game. Obviously she is the most, I think she's the most physically punishing player in the W, and very skillful on top of it. I mean, she's, the Phoenix coach should be gone. I mean, the idea that their performance this year was inexcusable. And so, I think that it is going to be a situation where, maybe Chloe Bibby is like the hockey goon, who comes in and basically starts a fight or something. I don't know. Get that Aussie stuff going.
I mean, she is an Aussie. We've covered enough of them over the last few years. We know how they go.
Yeah.
I would agree with you, especially the first round being a 3-game series. I do think there's a little more of the seeding stuff in the WNBA where teams will just start dropping weird games to try and get into position, because you just have to win 2 out of 3 and you're
right.
Like if you're the Fever, right, and you have that shooting variance where you can just pop off a 50% 3-point shooting night and shoot 35 of them, you almost win that one by default, and then it's just a 1-1, series. I do think there's going to be some tomfoolery with the seeding. It's just going to be interesting because I do think teams might look at Golden State and say they haven't been there yet. They haven't been on that long, deep run. Maybe we want to position to the 7 seed. But then the penalty of trying to position yourself is if you position that wrong, you get to play the Lynx or the Aces, which defending champions are the best team in the league. That's quite the penalty. So I think it's really going to be interesting to see how teams navigate that in the 3 through in the 4 through 8 spot.
4 through 8, I think, is a grab bag.
Yeah. And also, if you're the difference between the 4-5 seed is home court advantage in a 3-game series. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at either,
Exactly.
It adds a lot of intrigue to it, where I'll be watching more of the random games than I have all season. All right, Britt. Well, we're almost at an hour, so I'm going to thank you for joining. Did that come out on Racket today?
It should be. I don't know. It's in the hands of the editor, so we'll see. But the guy came back from vacation. My editor came back from vacation this morning, and I would imagine he's got 2 or 3 things he's got to do. And given the fact they don't play again until the 30th, the piece, has some legs to it. The Golden State game is fading, but the issues that were presented in the Golden State game will still be relevant.
Absolutely. Well, you're also banned on Twitter, so whenever that does come out, I'll share it out on my side on Twitter.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's one of those things.
Elon forgives you.
Well, I mean, and he won't, and so I probably won't be back. It's for the record. I mean, for people, I'm not on Twitter, so I can't explain it, but it quite frankly angered me when Elon Musk went on a tirade under his own pen name in his own site, demanding that Derek Chauvin be released from jail, and that BLM was, obscuring the truth, and basically that he was innocent, that the whole George Floyd fentanyl thing and all that narrative, and never mind a court of law convicting a police officer of murder. When does that happen?
Not often.
And so, you have a situation, and it was, they did not convict him of first degree murder. They convicted him of incidental, whatever, but anybody who saw that video around the world, it created an outrage around the world. And so basically all I said was, will someone please kneel on the neck of Elon Musk for 9.5 minutes and test his claim that Derek Chauvin is innocent. And for that, I was suspended and told that my suspension, I think, could be over if I would agree to delete the tweet. And I'm still trying to figure out whether or not I really want to do that, because if I do, I'm going to have to figure out some way to otherwise address it in some way. And I don't know if I want to be clever by half on Twitter rules and everything, whether I want to stoop to that or, I mean, I like Blue Sky. I'm happy on Blue Sky. I like to go to both of them because I have really valuable follows on both sites. I enjoy the conversation. I tend to put most of my political stuff on Twitter because I don't like to preach to a choir. I want the engagement. And I would love the engagement on the innocence or guilt of Derek Chauvin. I want to have that conversation and hear, what they say. I think it was laid out in pretty painstaking detail in the course of a goddamn trial. So I do think that in terms of evidentiary arguments, I'm on pretty firm footing. But, not to mention what everybody saw with their own eyes. But anyway, that's a digression. That's why I'm not on Twitter, and that's why I may or may not be back. It'll probably depend on whether or not I'm missing some people on Twitter that I really enjoy following enough to delete a tweet that I don't think should be deleted.
Have you ever deleted a tweet?
Never.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I've ever seen you. I've even seen you co-tweet things saying this is wrong, but I don't delete.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the point. The point is what I say should be on the record. I mean, there was something where I basically said, if the choice is between Netanyahu and anti-Semitism, call me an anti-Semite. And there was a dust up over that. That I eventually, I did take that back because I said to myself, that's an injustice to all the really, really brave and principled, mostly Israeli, but also American Jewish people who saw the outrage of Gaza and now Lebanon and the West Bank and are protesting against it. So, I thought that tweet was wrong and basically said so in a multi-tweet thing. And the people at MinPost said, hey, you can delete that tweet now if you want. And I said, no, the anti-Semitism tweet will remain on the record because I said it. And at the time I believed it. So, you've got to own what you've done.
Well, and the best thing about humanity, well, in its best form, the best thing about humanity is like you can grow, like you can change your opinions, you can change how you think about things. That's like,
and that change shouldn't be obscured.
Exactly. You shouldn't have to hide a change, right? People should be happy that people are capable for changing.
And I mean, I do understand, when I think of, I went to high school in the late 60s, early 70s, there was an F word for gay people that I threw around. I threw around, I was a football player and I was, one of those guys that, one of those beefy, stupid people who use that epithet casually to gay people and non-gay people. And so I look back on that. I was not 10 years ago, would I have used the N-word? I have no idea. I know by the time I was in, high school or even, junior high, maybe even late elementary school, the civil rights movement was going on enough. And I had teachers who were aware enough to apprise me of that I never would have used that word. But if I use the F word for gay people, the insult, then I can think of myself as perhaps being capable, if I wasn't educated on race, to use the other word. So again, I understand not wanting to own that. At the same time, you are what you are, and if I don't acknowledge ways I'm racist or ways I'm prejudiced or ways that I am less than I want to be in terms of how I regard myself, then I think I've always believed that acknowledging mistakes in any way, shape, or form is a sign of strength. And so I have always, and I'm a privileged person, so it's easy for me to take that position. But I prefer to acknowledge when I'm wrong because I think I want to be a quote unquote stand-up guy. And so that is a part of my image that I want. Integrity matters to me. And so I think the only way you get that is if you endure painful moments.
It's also something that's
reading about Derek Chauvin and Elon Musk was not that. That was not a painful moment at all. That was
I think I'd probably take your side. I would just say like the thing I appreciate about that is that it is something that is sorely missed in society right now, where there is so much doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on bad decisions or bad takes that you said with the Israeli comment of just like being able to admit that you were wrong and grow from it is something that like we just desperately need. I think it's an example that more people need exposure to, and you have a large following on Twitter and you expose people to that like, hey, it is okay to be wrong and it's okay to grow.
And I do think it happens a lot more away from social media.
Yeah.
I do think that people in social settings that are not in a group of thousands, that are in a group of dozens at most, 4 or 5 perhaps, who make a flagrant error, do come clean to people. And I just think it's easier. You don't want to court the mob, and that's, especially for people, as I say, that are less, that weren't, a white male born in the United States of America in 1953. It is harder to consider, what the mob may do.
Well, Britt, on a faith in humanity note, we'll close it there. Thank you so much for doing this again. I always love our chats.
My pleasure.
For people who joined into this a little bit late, that is my dog Mia, who is finding something outside that needs the attention of everyone in the house. But you can listen to this full live stream on X or YouTube or Buzzer as soon as I hit end stream. It'll be out as a podcast tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. That would be August 27th. And then, like I said, we'll be back with El Mose after the Atlanta Dream game. But thanks again, Britt, and thanks everyone for listening.